rubbing his fingers absently together, he would try to banish the night's unhappiness and find his way into the day. In the years since the Americans had swept the island, he had lived with his wife Alessandra in one half of a small palazzo in the medieval quarter of Palermo on the narrow Via Butera, their windows glazed and facing the sea. If asked, he would admit it was his house, but not his home. His true home stood behind thick walls, several streets away, in a slump of cracked stone and wind-rotted masonry from a bomb borne across the Atlantic, a bomb whose sole purpose was the obliteration of the world as it had been. That bomb fell in April 1943, and his wife's estate at Stomerse, far to the north in Latvia, had been overrun by the Russians in the same month. They had found themselves homeless and orphaned as one. He walked now the streets of his city a different man, a man burdened by his losses, not freed by them. For he had been born on a mahogany table in that lost palazzo on Via di Lampedusa, and had slept alone in a small bed in the very room of his birth all throughout his childhood and into his adulthood, and for 10 years even after he was married. And he did not know who he might be without that room to return to. The war had taken everything. There was no running water in their half of the palazzo, and the ceiling of its ballroom had collapsed in the bombing 12 years earlier. He had filled what was left of that with the furniture salvaged from his destroyed palace. And each morning he would wash, using a bowl of scummy water left out from the night before, in a bathroom that leaked when it rained. A most extraordinary room, he would joke bitterly. No water in the taps, and yet water running all the same. He thought of that often now, in the early light, when he would rise alone and wrap a blanket around his shoulders and tread softly past his wife's bedchamber. His dying mother had returned to the Lampedusa palazzo after the armistice, and lived out her last year in its ruins. His wife held no such attachments to the old world of Palermo. Alessandra Wolf entered a room like a door closing, blocking out the light. She was a linguist and reader of literature, and the only female psychoanalyst in Italy, and she worked into the night with her patients in their historical library, and he loved her for her mind and for the solitude they shared. She was the daughter of the singer Alice Barbi, last muse of the composer Brahms, and when her mother remarried, she became stepdaughter to his uncle Pietro in London. Upon meeting her, he had been, he recalled, unable to speak. "You will call me Lissy," she had said from the first. He had liked her black hair and blacker eyes, and her broad, strong shoulders, with the power of a stage soprano in them. From his first glimpse of her in London 30 years ago, when she was still married to her first husband, he had thought her handsome and remote. It amazed him that so much time had passed. He saw in her now the same woman he had seen then, a woman older than he, more worldly, a woman who strode always some feet ahead of him in the street, and spoke to him over one shoulder without turning, and whose stern grace could be mistaken for arrogance. But there was such tenderness in her. And because she was intelligent, and not classically beautiful, her opinions had often made her company unbearable to men. And he liked that about her too. It was on a morning in late January that he was called back to his doctor's offices for the results of a spirometer test. He had risen in pain and twisted his bedsheets into a knot and swung his soft white feet out onto the floor, startled by a new dizziness, a shortness of breath, as if his body had decided at last to begin its betrayal. That sensation had passed. But then, at the turn of the high marble staircase on his way out to breakfast, the pain had struck him again, and he had gripped the banister white-knuckled, the paintings of his ancestors above hanging in the gloom, and had gasped and wrestled at the knot of his tie. He did not know if he was being fanciful. He had pressed 2 fingers to his heart and breathed. It was true that a newfound anxiety was in him.